Now, the idea of a judge solemnly sentencing a woman to be stoned to death for alleged adultery feels to most of us like something from the Middle Ages. But that was the fate of Iranian Sakina Ashtiani before the government there commuted her sentence to just hanging. And last week she had to endure the horror of a mock execution. But are we right to express outrage and disgust? Is the way another state punishes its wrongdoers really any of our business?
Accused of adultery, Iranian Sakina Mohammadi Ashtiani was sentenced to be stoned to death. The judgment was condemned around the world as a brutal and medieval punishment.
They bury women up to their chest, above their breasts, and they bring stone that the size of stone is quite important. It shouldn't be that big, so they don't kill them right away. So they actually torture them, gradually kill them.
Shiva Mahboubi is campaigning for Sakina's release. She fled to the UK from Iran after she was imprisoned for campaigning against the government. And while she was inside, she witnessed the full harshness of the system.
A good friend of mine, she was only at the time 16 years old, and she got actually executed in prison among 16 other young girls same age. They would rape them before the execution, so when they die they don't go to heaven as an innocent virgin.
But Iran's culture is different, says the Iranian government, and it says it's stopping stoning as a punishment for adultery and homosexuality. The government argues Sakina is being executed for murdering her husband and claims she's confessed to this crime live on TV. But human rights campaigners like Shiva doubt the confession is true, and they say it's our moral duty to protest against Sakina's punishment.
It doesn't mean just because brutality against women and against people happening in another country, we should close our eyes. I mean, what happened to humanity if that's the case? We have to continue this pressure.
Well, what do you think? Should we put Iran in the dock for laws that belong in the Dark Ages, or are we wrong to impose our values on another culture? If you've got a webcam, go to our website, click on the video call link, make your point by phone, by text, by email or by tweet, and all the details are on the screen. Dr. Arik Sigman, to most people, this is a black and white, an absolute moral case of right and wrong.
Of course.
And to most Muslims as well, who do not think that stoning has a place. But is there something else going on here?
Yes. I've been to Iran, by the way, and like many places, it's a shame. One of the kindest cultures, who are terribly kind to children. You never see that on the news. We only see the extreme things. But aside from that, this is really a question about moral imperialism. I think we should obviously protest, but that's very different from expecting them to conform to the way that we do things. We're going to have to coexist in this state where we protest, but we have to accept the fact that, by the way, I did a little bit of research about what we used to do in this country. We had, let me see, the breast ripper, self-explanatory, does what it says on the tin. For women especially, the drowning pit, burning at the stake, the Iron Maiden, and so it goes on.
You're talking about hundreds of
Indeed.
years ago.
And we expect every other culture, because we have computers and we have nuclear power and so on, that they will evolve their legal system as quickly as we have changed ours. And we have to accept the fact, even though we protest, that they probably are not going to do so as quickly as us.
But the question is whether we should condemn, object, and
yes.
even take sanctions. And I think the answer there is yes.
Yes.
Every country in the Western world interferes with other countries on very arbitrary basis. Sometimes it's because they want to remove a dictator. Sometimes it's because they want to create relationships with oil-bearing countries.
Indeed.
If we only interject in the world when it is in our own self-interest, that in itself is something quite immoral.
Rosie, how would we feel if Iranians protested about things that they thought were immoral and unjustified in our country, in our legal system?
Well, I think it's about acknowledging that we're part of the world, and yes, if we were doing something which was gross, disgusting, deeply misogynistic, as torturing, stoning women to death is, then by all means, bring it on. You know, I think the world has to be interested
But it's
in
about
what the rest of the
moral
world...
relativism, isn't it?
Well, I think culture is not a static thing, and what and cultural values move. I think,
but they take time to move.
I think
that's
the fact is that Nelson Mandela would never have walked free from jail on that momentous moment if the world hadn't taken a real interest in horror and what apartheid was doing. And I would like to ask you, Eric, should we have gone to war with Germany? Is it okay for Germans to build concentration camps and murder millions of Jews if it's the laws of their country?
That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying that we should.
Should we interfere?
Well, first of all, believe it or not, we didn't go to war because Hitler was building concentration camps.
I'm not saying
Sadly,
we did.
didn't.
I'm not saying I didn't say that, but I'm saying should we have? If someone like Hitler was doing what he did in Germany,
yes,
would we have had the right, the moral obligation to go in and stop it?
That volume of people, yes. It's a very different.
The reality is, anytime you go directly from one argument to Nazis, we're in trouble.
Indeed.
Let's look at this. I have no problem with people in Iran looking at Britain and saying it is terrible the way you fly the rainbow flag over the church on Trafalgar Square during Pride. I have no problem with that. What I have a problem with is the fact that if I were to go to Iran, then I could be hung. That's my problem. So the issue that we look at Iran and say, yes, the 15 and 16-year-old boys who were hung last year for being ostensibly gay, that's a problem. I don't think that's outrageous. In the same, I do think there is an element that we are more interested in certain countries than others because they're easier targets. We look at Iran and we think radical Islam. And because of that anti-Islam fervour, especially that's building at the moment, if you look at America...
Do you think we're unwittingly being drawn into some sort of broader political...
No, I mean, I'm an Amnesty ambassador and I think that it's really important that we speak out. Yet at the same time, we need to be well-researched as we do it. We can't just cast blanket statements over the entire Iran, but we do know that that administration does some pretty horrific things.
Yes,
for a kind people, people don't hang 15-year-olds for kissing boys.
Officially, the Iranian government does not condone stoning. There's been an official moratorium since 2002. Officially, it's dropped from the penal code. I wonder if we can talk to Dr. Suhaib Hassan from the Sharia Council, which administers Sharia law for the UK. This sentence has caused outrage, and John referred to a couple of other sentences as well, caused outrage around the world. Can you explain why, under Sharia law, this still goes on in Iran?
Of course, when we speak about Sharia in this country, we are confined to the Muslim personal law, which governs only the marriages, divorces, inheritance. But as a Muslim country like Iran or Saudi Arabia, they got the right to implement Sharia in its totality, which includes the penal code of Islam as well. And the main objective behind it to create a society which is pure, which is clean from evil. In this country, we don't approve drug trafficking at all. We want to make our streets, our houses, our society clear of drugs. In the very same way, in the Muslim country, they want their society to be clean from the evils, especially fornication and adultery.
John?
In the case of adultery, yes, the punishment is very, very harsh, and that is only if the couple is married and then they commit adultery, then they have to be stoned to death. But it is not easily proved. You have to provide 4 witnesses who actually witnessed that act to be happened.
I think firstly...
That is at all.
Dr. Hassan, thank you.
It's very hard to implement this punishment.
Yes, and it happens very rarely as well, and not in most Muslim countries.
Even if it's rare, I think it's something that needs to be noted, because what you can look at, even looking at countries like America, who are stepping in some states backwards in terms of their
firing squads,
their fire and brimstone.
Electric chairs.
Yeah, and we know there's reams of evidence that tells us that these kind of torture techniques, these types of capital punishment don't work. They don't have the impact on society that it's really just societal judgment.
Rosie, lots of countries still have the death penalty, which of course we don't have here. I mean, the US,
it's not the same as the death penalty.
Japan,
it's torture. These women take hours to die.
And there are other countries which also stone women.
Size stones. It's
but
absolutely disgraceful.
Is there something about that some people allege this is about demonising Iran for a political purpose.
I don't care. I think the fact is that Mrs. Ashtiani is going to, even if she's now going to be hung, you know, that's, what for? For adultery. In Iran, men can divorce their wives, women can't. In Iran, men can. Men can get off for all sorts of things. Do you know, out of the last 10 stonings, 9 of them have been for women. Men are allowed to be buried up to their waist so they can escape if possible. Women are buried up to their breasts. Escape is absolutely impossible. It is completely horrendous.
All that's true, but I do think
that... but it doesn't matter. I don't care about the... I mean, you know, this is a really serious... It's a really serious issue.
I agree with you. All I was going to say was that...
kind of, you know...
I'm not going to trivialise it.
Arik is not
No, I was actually agreeing with
stoning,
you. I was saying I agree with all of that. And I also think it's absolutely appalling. However, what I was going to say is, but I do agree that it's also, in addition to that, being exploited as a further way of discounting Iran.
Maybe
because there are political things going on now. So it's great ammunition to make the West dislike Iran and its culture even more.
I think that's true. That is true. But the fact is, it doesn't take away from what's gone on there. But I think what we can do...
But you could have said that, you know, going against apartheid, not buying Cape apples, all that sort of stuff was a way of demonising South Africa. It worked. It worked really well.
I think what we can say is that what's needed is to look around the world, because the fact is that you can find examples like this in countries that you would not expect.
But Nigeria,
you can find them in Nigeria, you can find them in Mexico.
I have to talk...
We just have to be clear that it's not just about this Islamic regime.
Yeah. Let's talk from Tehran University. We're joined by Professor Saeed Mohammed Morandi. Professor Morandi, most Muslims would condemn this stoning. It is controversial. Most Muslim countries do not have it as part of their penal code. Why does Iran?
Well, I think, first of all, the debate is very one-sided and unfair. First of all, this lady is not going to be stoned. She murdered her husband, and she's facing capital punishment. That's the situation. There was no mock execution. The point earlier mentioned that in Iran, women are first raped before execution to prevent them from going to heaven is also absurd. There are many MKO terrorist organization members. The MKO were people who fought alongside Saddam Hussein and killed thousands of Iranians in terrorist activities. They now have offices in Europe and in the United States under different names, and they're the sort of people who carry out this sort of propaganda. In one,
you think this is simply a propaganda issue? Do you?
I think to a large degree it is, because I think the understanding. I'm assuming that John and or Rosie have not lived in Iran.
Okay, no, well they haven't. But Professor Morandi, I must leave it there.
If you'd allow me, I think that this, whether you like capital punishment or not, that's another thing.
Okay.
But she's not going to be stoned.
Okay, Professor Morandi, thank you very much. I'm so sorry to interrupt you, and I understand the point you make. We should make the point that her guilt is contested. We must leave that debate there, because the result of our text poll is in. But of course you can continue that debate, and all of us, on our website. But I do want to bring you the result of our text vote. Is money ruining sport? Here's what you told us. 97% of those of you who voted say yes, it is. 3% say no, it isn't. So, an overwhelming result in the text poll this morning. And thanks to all of you who have taken part today, to John Amici, Rosie Millard and to Dr. Arik Sigmund. Please don't call the phone lines anymore, as they are now closed. You can find out a lot more about this programme on our website and continue the debates there. And you can also sign up to our newsletter with tips on how to get in touch and news on future shows as well. We're back next Sunday at the same time, 10 o'clock BBC One, and that's when we'll be discussing the first visit of a pope to the UK in almost 30 years. Have a great week. See you Sunday. Bye-bye.